Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the another edition of our webinar in the COVID-19 series. Today we'll be discussing, has COVID-19 expedited digital transformation? With us, we have an esteemed panelist with a diverse background. So let me give my take before introducing our guests. Ever since COVID-19 epidemic hit us, inevitably all industries started operating in a constant flux, and businesses are rapidly adopting their strategies to evolve with rapidly changing customer behavior. The digitalizing of operational processes has been on the radar for companies of all sizes for a while, but has usually kept pending for one reason or other. In pre-COVID-19 times, digitalization was necessity forced upon the organization because of several factors like competition, peer pressure, investor influence, dip in revenues. Many firms have started adopting digital changes. And the changes were also minimal, either at a surface level or at the back-end platform, but not fulfilling an end-to-end automated customer journey. A global pandemic like COVID-19 has pushed businesses everywhere into an accelerated state of digitalization. Today, businesses have to adapt to new environment and adapt quickly. So far, culture change is the hardest part of digital transformation. When the crisis ends or eases, we will have entered into a new digital normal. Your strategies need to be reflecting this shift. With this introduction, I would like to introduce my panelists today. We have with us Mr. Vivek Kele, who is a co-founder and director of Team Global Logistics Limited. He is also chairman of FILA, Federation of Indian Logistics Association, and executive member of the governing council at Logistics Sector Silk Council. He is also a member on the governing board of Narottam Morarji Institute of Shipping. Then we have Mr. Dhruv Kotak, who is the managing director of the J.M. Bakshi Group of Companies, a diversified business group involved in shipping and logistics. The group has 104 years of maritime experience and grown to be the true global player with its customers spread across 55 countries. Then we have Pramod San, who is the vice president of Siemens Limited, Mumbai, heads the import, export and export control and customs for the South Asia region that includes India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Maldives. He brings more than 30 years of experience in supply chain management, procurement, logistics, import-export foreign trade. Then we have Ms. Liji Noval, co-founder and managing director of Odex India Solutions. At Odex, she has been passionate for emerging new value-added solutions for shipping industry and helping to build India's first real-time B2B payment solutions. She has over 21 years of experience in business strategy and sales. For the past 10 years, Liji has been focused on creating ecosystem for industries. Then we have Mr. Raghav as the CEO of FreightBro, who strategizes and manages the team and with his rich expertise and technology and logistics. His entrepreneurial journey began with a clear aim to solve complex challenges faced by the freight forwarding industry and to improve the overall user experience for freight forwarders and their customers alike. Earlier, he was with Panalpina and also at DHL, handling diverse responsibilities. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this webinar. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being here. I would like to start asking Mr. Vivek Kele, sir, what have you seen as a freight forwarder and also at the helm of affairs of driving some of the digital strategies? What have you seen during the lockdown scenario, and also what is the change that is coming in the our transactions, our movement of documents or goods, because we are talking digital. So what do you see change? Where was the problem and what challenges you have seen briefly?
Okay, so I think there are two specific areas where we have seen the changes. One is on the transaction side. So we have, we've seen typically when there is a shipment that happens, either it's an export shipment or import shipment. On the export side, we have seen that a lot of bills of lading are being now have been converted from original bills of lading to the way bills. So it's easier, and so you really don't need the original bill of lading copy. And on the import side also, we have seen, a lot of delivery orders are being now given against LOI in absence of an original bill of lading. And original bill of ladings are now being converted from original bills of lading to way bill. Typically, in a containerized, shipment mode, we are seeing these changes. And a lot of the documentation which was initially required in form of physical papers now is being accepted, in a scanned or email mode. And that's on the transaction side. So, virtually the business is going on without people having to exchange original documents. So I think there's one big change that we've seen, and this change is for good and for here to stay. On the regulatory side, we have seen a lot of initiative from the government. Of course, we have seen the circular from Secretary Shipping that speaks about enforcing and putting an ecosystem in place for pushing the e-bill of lading and e-DO. And we are in extensive dialogue with the Ministry of Commerce to have ecosystem in place, to have the operating procedures in place, to get the banks on board, to get the custom authorities on board, to ensure that we have this effective implementation of e-bill of lading and e-DO. So I think these are the two. So on the policy side, we see a lot of initiative by the government because they also want to promote and ensure that the unnecessary interaction of people is avoided and the social distancing norms are maintained. So they are trying to, create policy level changes so that this social distancing is achieved. At the same time, the businesses, are forced to implement paperless systems so that it is easy for people to transact having, in a paperless environment. So we see that, and this is the beginning. And as and when the businesses, and the banks and the regulatory authorities are more active after the post-lockdown, is only going to gather momentum.
Thank you, Vivek. That is a very positive change that we are saying. I would like to bring in Mr. Dhruv Kotak. Dhruv, you have been like an early entrant in transforming the port community system from the earlier avatar to 1.x. But we have been hearing that not many came on board and then using the platform effectively. In the changed scenario, how PCX 1.x is more relevant, more useful, and the need for more people using it. So what do you see?
Sir, thank you. I think, first of all, I think we have to understand what is the relevance of and more than the relevance itself, what are the challenges associated with people coming on board port community systems. So I think first of all you need a mindset change, which is what is needed for more and more stakeholders to understand the need to come on board and share cumulatively as a community. So if you break down what is a port community system, I think people very often they think it's a port system. They forget the community word. And India, unfortunately, we have a challenge with understanding the word community. What the word community means is that people come together and for the betterment and the interest of one another, they start sharing, exchanging things, doing things so that the community as a whole benefits. I think, therefore, when you look at why it was probably not the degree of adoption was still limited, is because I think the number of people that came on board, I think at various instances, whether it was shipping lines, they were worried whether the government would have an overlook in terms of their invoices and their documentation. There was a worry that CFSs were worried that their invoices and documents would be seen. Terminals were worried. Different stakeholders were worried that the valuable data of their own was going to be lost or used or misused or they were going to be at a disadvantage if they started exchanging information or sharing documents on such platforms. And therefore, it's something where two things are needed. One is that you have to have this type of a cataclysmic event, like a pandemic, which forces people to start coming together. They understand the need for digital communication, because today you are not able to go to people's offices. So you have to start exchanging more and more things digitally. And I think the second element is the government. I think the government was moving a little bit slowly, and I think correctly, because I think they wanted to make sure that different parts of the community are taken into confidence, and the community as a whole starts participating. And I have to give government credit on that. But I think the change now you will see is that the government has realized how important this is, and the community has realized how important this is. So I think you will see regulation across the board by government, whether it's the Reserve Banks of India, whether it's the Ministry of Shipping, Department of Logistics, the kind of regulations and rules that they will come out with, which will make this mandatory, I think will happen very, very quickly. I think they will also enlarge the scope of it, which will involve more and more people. And I think that that is the first step, I think, in any digital transformation exercise of a company, nation, entity, community. That's the first step. The first step is the first dimension, which I call is that all elements, all transactions need to be on a single platform. They need to be put onto that platform. The second step is that all people need to start using that platform. And these things can only be done by community will and by act of government. And I think both these two things are very ripe at the moment, and it will happen. And the third step is for entrepreneurs like Liji and Raghav here, where they will have the ability to use this digital ecosystem, which will be set up by the community and the government, to then provide a whole host of services for the betterment of businesses. So I think this is the stages which it will follow, and this is what's going to happen very, very quickly.
Thank you, Dhruv. We also would like to see that system becomes more useful and operational, and then used universally. My question to Pramod. Pramodji, can you respond as a shipper? You oversee a lot of these export, import, supply chain, logistics. So Vivek mentioned that things have turned to more digital. Digital transformation is happening. Especially we see a change coming from the government also. So what is experience during such a scenario? Were you able to transact seamlessly, and what's your experience?
I think Vivek, what he has mentioned is that at the moment on transaction level, there is a lot of improvements. So we are able to have the DOs, we are able to have the bill of lading, and of course, it will vary from shipper to shipper, but still we can see that we have a good rate of movement of goods. Say, for example, in the first week of first lockdown, we were having just 13% clearance happening, which has gone to close to around 60% in second lockdown. And now we are close to around 80% of clearance happening in third lockdown. And it is happening with all my team sitting here and able to get documents seamlessly. But here I wanted to mention little more difference between air and sea. Also, there are something which are good into air, which are helping much more. Like last few months back, we have started a project of connecting for our major imports at Mumbai. So GMAX, we are connecting it to our own system, which is a EXIM portal. And we have a system by which all the shippers are giving me documents electronically, which I connect to a broker and get pushed to the ICE gate. And same way from GMAX, I get a feed. So I am able to trace, which is at the moment on my test run, which will go live. But I have as good as port community system for me for air happening. I am able to see the really what time the segregation happened, what time the movements has happened, what time the bill of entry is filed, when it got cleared, to write up to the tempo number of a material. So what Dhruv mentioned is very clear. This port community system, when it will be actively available to shipper, I think it is going to change lot many things. And most important thing is that needs to be neutral. It needs to be a trust. There should be transparency and integrity. So I think with this, we will have the moving from digitalization, which is at transaction level, to a seamless process. And I think this COVID-19 has given us this opportunity, and it will get accelerated very fast. And we are really hopeful that yes, the laws which will come, which will help to a new level of a digitalization.
Thank you, Pramodji, for this insight. Lizzie, you have been working on this digitalization, digital transformation with several shipping lines, and you have launched several solutions. So my question is, at what stage we are in a collaborated and connected environment for the seamless movement of our creating a seamless digital ecosystem?
So there are two things that I have seen that have transformed from when we started our digital journey in 2015 to 2020 now. When we started, Dhrubai mentioned this word called as community, and we had a vision to become a community platform and get together all these stakeholders. Two things, of course, mandates help. The willingness to adapt and adopt to something is usually driven by a need for efficiency of the organization, and second, by the will of the middle and the top management of the organization. So what we saw is there were some early adopters who went the whole gamut of digitization, even amongst the shipping lines, and there were some who followed. To come to the second part, today what we are seeing is reality staring us. I mean, however much we want to say that the situation has improved drastically, we must remember that most large organizations have enterprise systems that are local, that are hosted in their own offices. And today the biggest challenge for a seamless transaction is ensuring that the stakeholders are on par at a technology level. When I say technology level, if you look at an ODEX or a FreightPro or PCS, all of these are cloud-based systems. So whether I'm working from home or from my office, it really doesn't matter to me. I'm able to access the system and carry on with my work. But what we see is that shipping lines, terminal operators, CFSs, shippers themselves, forwarders, large forwarders, all of them have enterprise systems which are hosted in-house. The challenge comes when cloud systems are trying to interact with these enterprise level systems, and this interaction is managed through people. So has the ecosystem come together at a time like this? The answer is yes. Have we come together seamlessly? We still have a far, far way to go. The transformation has to start at multiple levels. The first is at the technology level amongst the stakeholders themselves. So even though there may be a willingness, we must also work with reality. And reality is that a lot of the enterprise systems are not geared for work from home. Even though I might have a good bandwidth from my house, I cannot connect to my office system because there are VPN issues, there are firewall issues, there are so many factors that have to fall in place for a seamless transaction and a seamless connectivity to occur. So I think apart from the fact that there has to be a community and an ecosystem initiative, organizations will also have to start drawing up very quickly their own transformation roadmap as to how are they going to move from enterprise systems to cloud-based systems, so that the gains that we have currently of work from home, I mean, we've freed up office infrastructure. There are efficiency gains that cloud-based providers are seeing today. How does that percolate to the entire industry? And only when the entire industry is at a certain technology level of interaction can we expect seamlessness. Because otherwise I will have somebody sitting in Ludhiana trying to transact with an enterprise system in Mumbai with a human in between who's actually connecting to this enterprise system. It becomes very, very difficult. So the ground reality is that, and my friends from the shipping lines here would agree, that each of us are pulling longer hours today working from home than we used to actually do working in office. And no weekends. I know that a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my partners in the shipping lines are today working 24 hours, 48 hours, just to ensure what Pramodji said, that there is 80% clearance. The fact behind the 80% clearance is that there are people sitting at home trying to connect to enterprise systems and achieve this. So that is also the reality that we have to bring to the table and ensure that, is there any hand-holding that can be done by industry stalwarts when we come in? When we're trying to build an ecosystem, how do we ensure that all elements and all stakeholders in the ecosystem are at least at some level of technological maturity? And that, I think, would be something that can serve as an obstacle. Yeah.
Thank you, Lizzie. Wonderful. So the transformation roadmap and hand-holding to reach that stage, and moving up from the legacy systems to cloud systems as fast as possible. So these are the key messages. Raghav, a straight question to you. Is the scenario increased, more people coming onto online freight forwarding, booking boxes online more? How is the network working?
Yeah. Thanks. And I think, like everybody mentioned, these are unprecedented times for not just this industry, but throughout the world, where we are trying to cope up with a crisis like this. But as a very good saying goes, that don't miss a great crisis, right? So always take advantage of a great crisis. So this is a time that the industry across multiple stakeholders are taking a step back from the regular firefighting that this industry does. So because we are used to doing firefighting on a daily basis, so now we are outside the firefighting and looking at the fire and seeing how can there be innovative ways to put out of it. So, and technology is definitely helping, or technology is definitely being one of the options considered across boardrooms or across webinars and Zoom calls at this point of time. And everybody spoke about connected systems. Everybody spoke about a community being built, and trusting each other and building a whole ecosystem around it is very important. But when everybody is thinking about the community as a whole, there has to be players also thinking about a particular stakeholder and get into the nuances of the stakeholder. If a technology or a platform is not providing value to one spectrum or one stakeholder for that matter, it's going to be very difficult to have a community system around it. So if there is going to be, so with respect to Freight Bro, we are very freight forwarder focused. We tend to get into the freight forwarders operation, sales, pricing, and get to automate it, right? So we are seeing, so to answer your question, to give data, because we typically always look at data and then derive at what has to be done, right? So March first week, if you can consider normalcy as March first week, 100% of inquiries are forwarders searching internally on their platform. If that has to be considered as 100%, we saw a dip during the first week of April to go to 2%, 3% of the overall searches or overall inquiries. And that was the lowest point, and we saw it constantly climbing. And as latest as yesterday, we saw inquiries getting back to 35%. So 35% of normalcy. So which means that people are actually, so it's a great positive sign. When we saw a great dip, we thought that, okay, what's going to happen? Is it going to go below and people are going to go back to dormancy? Then it is great to see day on day data when things are pulling up. So I'll also post it sometime on my LinkedIn on how the data has climbed. Right. So now we are back to 35%, and we are seeing that from 35%, it will be back. If you can extrapolate, it will be back to 50 to 60% in once the lockdown is lifted. So every stakeholder is trying to pull through above their weight, like Liji mentioned, trying to work 24 hours to 36 hours continuously and trying to pull through more than what they can to ensure things get back to normal. But digitization is going to become the new normal. Everybody's talking about new normal now. So digitization and platforms are going to be the new normal, and freight forwarders and other stakeholders are now making note of that and trying to digitize their internal operations working from home. The only concern that everybody has is security. Nobody wants a ransomware attack to happen, right? When you are all working from home, the worst that can happen is an attack on the system. So everybody is worried about security. If those basic concerns of security, data integrity can be managed, I think platforms are going to be the future, and freight platforms are going to be like Zoom calls, which are being used everywhere.
Thank you, Raghav. So the underlying point is security, data integrity, and trust for the digital platforms. Before we dive deep into that, I will take a couple of questions from the participants, and then I have more questions. This question is from Naren Pingale, which was answered by Vivek to some extent, but I would like other opinions, other panelists' opinions also. So in our poll, 55% have said the biggest challenge in digital transformation is lacking the business partner support. How this can be addressed? So Vivek mentioned that it has to be the intervention from the authorities. So any of the panelists have any other opinion to offer on this?
Let me try and take that and give. I mean, I'm big fan of government intervention normally, and me and Vivek, we share that I think in common, where we believe that government has a massive role to play in nudging people in terms of the right direction. So let me not take away from what Vivek is saying, because I do believe that is going to be the most effective and most quickest way of bringing about behavioral transformation. But I think another way to do it also is, I think, a little bit taking a hint from what Raghav mentioned. Is, I think, again, when you're building a digital community or you're building a digital ecosystem, you've got to try, and when you're trying to bring in other people within the ecosystem, you've got to try and solve for each of their problems. You've got to make sure that it's worthwhile for them to create this transformation. So automatically, if they realize that there is something in it for them, like one thing which, taking forward from what, what Pramod mentioned, what, Ramprasad ji, you also mentioned, I think when you're dealing with a large port community system challenge, I think to try and create adoption, another very effective tool is to try and create various hooks, which create value for various partners within the ecosystem. And when I mean hooks or value, I mean they are able to get a service digitally in a far more efficient manner that they would get it in the analog world. So I think, you have to keep finding ways that they can get value. If that is done, I think you will see a lot of people being willing to come forward and participate. So I think that's just the way I would address it over and above what Vivek said. Okay. Vivek?
Yeah. I just would like to add by saying that, yes, I mean, it has to be a push and pull strategy. Firstly, you need to have the rules which demand that certain transactions be done in electronic means. So that is typically when you're dealing with the government, you ensure that all the submissions are done in an electronic format. I mean, we've seen that at least in the Indian context, when you're filing the income tax returns, when you're filing a GST returns, everything is electronic. And government has been able to mandate that, and we've seen very great results. But at the same time, when it is a community, yes, we have a challenge, and that's what Dhruv is talking about. There has to be a value proposition, and the private player, for them to be attracted to the platform, we have to offer values. Now, the challenge in this is what is a value for somebody may not be value for somebody else. So how do you identify certain services which has a larger acceptance in terms of or which has a value proposition or is seen as a value by majority of the community, so that the adoption is much more easier. And I will leave that question with answer to the how do you identify such values? And I would like DG and as well as Raghav to answer that, because they have been working in this domain of identifying values and trying to give solutions. So over to them, I think. But before that, I think Mr. Pramod wanted to say something.
Pramod, yeah.
Yeah. So I think what Vivek has mentioned and Dhruv mentioned is very clear. And I have a very clear example. Without regulation, things don't work. The e-airway bill has come 20 years back, but today it is only 70% is the penetration rate. So absolutely the government regulation is required, which will mandate. And why income tax return is 100% only? Because it is mandated by regulation. So I am very clear, e-airway bill, which is introduced 20 years back, still it is struggling at 70%. We need a regulation, number one. There is no doubt on that. But apart from that, as a community or as a stakeholder shipper, I must drive my own things because I need to have from where I will bring the efficiency when there is always a pressure to reduce the cost, reduce the lead time, reduce the cycle time, and bring the reliability. So unless I take my own steps, I think it will not happen. So one part is regulation, but each of the stakeholder has to strive that, okay, if I am, how I am going to get value addition, and if I do a win-win situation, it is very important. And my example is very clear. Suppose if I get a data from GEMX, I know that if there is a delay in segregation, I am able to see that. Or if the bill filing is late, I am able to see that. So two stakeholders will be at, similarly, if bill of entry is filed, passed, but duty is late paid, then my internal system I am able to end. So I have to take all the people in confidence and say that yes, there could be issues, but this transparency will help everybody to work more efficiently, and we are able to solve that delays or problems together. So I think this is very important that the stakeholders trust with each other and to see that win-win situation will come when everybody try to become efficient. I think this is what I will say.
Thank you, Pramod. Lizzie, you oversee a lot of implementation of this, and how is the attitude or mindset of business partners supporting the whole ecosystem?
So I've seen a major shift happen, really, Ram Prasadji, on the ecosystem partners. Of course, everyone has been talking about government, and like Pramodji rightly mentioned, if there's a government mandate, everybody will try to follow. But there was also another thing that Vivek mentioned about what is the value that we are bringing onto the table. I think faster adoption is driven because business partners are able to see that there is value that they're able to derive from connecting to all the stakeholders on a digital platform. Since they're able to see this value, that is what is really driving them, I would say. Because we must remember that a lot of these stakeholders are not India-centric. A lot of them come from different parts of the world, are governed by different regulations, do not submit to our framework, and probably also do not submit often to our business environments. For them, it is always about adopting to the local changes. And yet, where does it fall in the global priorities for them to adopt to the local changes? So, yes, mandates help because everybody can then come on the same platform. But the intrinsic value has to be that each stakeholder will have to see that there is either efficiency gain or cost saving by doing that. And how supportive have business partners been? I would say over the last 18 months, we have seen, even without a pandemic, there has been not just vocalized interest, but a willingness to find solutions. And seen that when we have gone live with modules like Vivek was mentioning that a lot of people are going for Waivers now. We in fact launched this more than 3 months back, saying that, and it was nothing, we were not preempting coronavirus or something like that. But the fact that Waivers can just be uploaded and it is a digital transaction available. It cuts short the visit to a shipping line's office. It cuts short a lot of paper that is being transferred here and there. And so there are many more solutions that we did over the last 3 to 4 months, which has been a culmination of almost 18 years of work since the beginning of 2019, I would say, where we have seen more and more shipping come on board, more forwarders who have come on board our platform. And the value that they get is at 2 places: efficiency gains for their own workforce, associated cost savings, of course. So, and that's something that even without a mandate, people are able to see.
Okay. Thank you, Lizzie. Earlier, Vivek mentioned about in the digital transformation, the interaction with plugging into the banking system. I would like to know more about, because that is one concern area for all the shippers or all the stakeholders. Can you elaborate how the banking system is integrated, well integrated into our transactional environment? Yeah, you're on mute. Yeah.
From the shipper side, Pramodji will have more inputs on that because he's the one who has been, interacting with the banks and trying to, negotiate documents and have the money flowed in. But from what we know is that what we know is that currently the e-bill of lading or bill of lading in electronic format. See, I just wanted to clarify for benefit of all the audience here. What we refer to e-bill of lading in India is not e-bill of lading as such. It is basically only remote printing of bill of lading. There's nothing like e-bill of lading in existence at the moment in India. We are just permitting or authorizing certain forwarders, certain shippers to print the bill of lading in their own office premises. So it is just a remote printing. It is not e-bill of lading. For e-bill of lading is basically a bill of lading which is sent across in a EDI format. It can be XML. It can be any other standard that you want to adopt. So the banking system currently is not ready to accept that because they don't they don't have the systems designed for it, and nor do they have any regulatory framework from the Reserve Bank of India or from the Indian Bank Association clarifying as to how to deal with documents in electronic format. And it is not only the bill of lading, but when you are negotiating a document, especially when there is a letter of credit involved, there are several other documents that that need to be submitted along with the bill of lading. If the bill of lading is converted to electronic format, what about the other documents? So that discussion is on with the Ministry of Commerce, and they're trying to identify as to the PDAs and the other agencies as to how do you ensure that those documents are also available in electronic format. So these are the challenges, and I think that's where we'll have to come in and create an environment which is which makes e-bill of lading or negotiations viable, be it for export or be it for imports. But I would like to hear first-hand experience of Mr. Pramod when it comes to transacting electronically with the banks.
I think Vivek, you have covered everything what I would have been saying. Definitely, I wanted to just point out, see, when the lockdown happened, each sector gave some guidelines or they produce something which will happen yearly. Custom came with that, okay, we don't need, we can accept the undertaking not on stamp paper, but with digital signature. Undertaking shipping companies have come out that, okay, they don't need bank guarantees, but they can accept on letterhead, duly signed, digitally signed. But in banking sector, we find that there is no simplification thing which is officially been announced really. We don't see that, okay, for till now we will accept for so and so date, this is a way we will do, or sometimes now the approvals, we have typically the 2 signatories into any of the document. So each bank is handling at the moment from case to case and from client to client based on his reputation, based on the what are the terms. And definitely with LCs and all, I think there is a challenge. Even the issuing of bank guarantees by banks is at the moment facing a challenge. That increased time, stamp paper not available, somewhere extensions are allowed on letterhead of this thing. But it need a cohesive first approach, at least at this time, is to issue some guidelines which will be followed till you change the regulation, and which is still a long way. So I am quite sure that the industry, shipper, exporter, all will be facing challenge based on their reputation, their relationship with bank. Each one will have a set of challenges, and I think there is need to be done something on this urgent basis. So a lot of suggestions have gone through bank for banking in ease of doing business into this situation, but we are still awaiting the really clear-cut inputs from them.
Thank you, Pramodji. Any other panelists would like to add any point to this, or can I move on to the next question? Okay. My next question to all the panelists, but I'll start with Dhruv. Dhruv, our industry business are built on relationships, but in the new environment, will standardized processes will become more important than personal relationships? Dhruv?
I think I think we're all, we may be living in a changed world, but I don't think we cease to be humans. So I think, and in human beings, I think relationships are extremely important, extremely critical. So no, I don't think you're going to see a change or moving away from the emphasis given to relationships. I think they will continue to be very, very significant. But I think we need to go down a little bit further in terms of, and Raghav is a former freight forwarder, and I'm sure he'll testify the same. You don't get freight forwarding, and sorry, so is Vivek. And you don't get freight forwarding contracts because of that someone is your buddy, or someone doesn't become your buddy because you're a freight forwarder. He becomes your buddy because, or you have a relationship because you are competent and you are able to provide a quality of service. You give a visibility in terms of supply chain and logistics, which enables that relationship to get formed, for that respect to get created. And I think, I'm going to add a few points here, which are nicely put. There's a person called Josie who has put this up. And the question was also about training, right? What's the training that's going to be required? And I think if you combine that with, we will live in a digitized world. There will be a lot of digital services, but they will strengthen people. They will strengthen freight forwarders. They will strengthen logistics companies, LSPs, to provide their service to a higher degree, their degree of visibility, their degree of control, their degree of being able to identify problems a lot quicker will be what will differentiate them from what service providers were doing in the past. And basis of that, they will be able to maintain and build relationships much more effectively than what people did in the past. And therefore, I think it's extremely critical that the future LSP providers, whether it's CHAs, forwarders, LCL providers, whoever you are within the overall logistics gamut, your ability to use these digital tools, use these standardization tools to enhance your service offering, and therefore strengthen your relationship, because it's not that relationship or the human connect is going to go away. I think it's going to get enhanced. I think this AI and tech eating up human jobs, I think, is highly overstated. I think it will lead to enhancement and more productivity, more efficiency. And therefore standardization, digitization will strengthen relationships if the LSPs learn to harness this strength, learn to harness this capability and this standardization. This is my only view on this, Ram Prasad ji.
Okay. Yeah, to add to Dhruv's point here, so basically Dhruv also mentioned, so I mentioned it in our last event also, that technology is just a facilitator in the whole scheme of things. So digital platforms are just a facilitator. So we are providing platforms specifically for freight forwarders who a lot of people think that they are relationship-based company. Freight forwarders are just middlemen. So when we have around 500 plus freight forwarders using us. When we go to a freight forwarder, we know for a matter of fact that it's not just relationship, like what Dhruv has also mentioned. It's not just relationship. It's the capability, it's the localization, the offering that they provide to their end customer, which is making them value in the overall supply chain. It's not people sometimes think that whatever platform comes into picture, will the middlemen get will they go out of the supply chain, for that matter of fact. But when we digitize a freight forwarder, like Dhruv mentioned, we enhance the relationship and we tell them that, hey, you can go and start representing yourself as a digital company. Like what a small Kirana. So if you look at the latest Jio and Facebook deal also, they're coming up with something called Kirana Tech. Kirana Tech is digitizing the Kirana store, which is downstairs, to have a platform on their own to ensure that they do home delivery rather than you taking Amazon or Flipkart, for that matter, making sure that the local guys are also digitized. So that's what we do for freight forwarders, and I truly agree with Dhruv's point. It's about ensuring that people remain as connected as they can. And people were used to typewriters before, people were used to pen and papers before. Now they're using a PC with an on-premise services. Now they're going to use a cloud service. That's the biggest differentiation that is going to be. People are going to be relevant.
Okay. One participant is asking a pertinent question, Kishore Day. When you have an e-bill, shipping lines need to waive off the document charges. So as a user, Pramodji.
Yeah. Okay. See, at every point of time in today's situation, everybody is looking at where he can cut the cost. And so if some people are definitely expecting that, okay, now this document which was earlier printed or now it has become there should be some cost reduction or fees should be reduced. These are some of the, from shipper side, these are some of the demands which will come. In this case, when both need to work together, because number one, if somebody is implementing digitized solution, it doesn't mean that it comes free of charge. There is a infrastructure cost, there is a IT cost, there is a people cost, a development cost. So anything which will come, I mean, it will have its cost. So I believe that these people need to sit together based on their this thing and will have, but definitely as a shipper will expect reduction wherever there is a improvements, and whenever there is a the things are made simple, there will be expectation from shipper to reduce the cost, but however as a collaborative manner which can be worked out. That is what I can say.
What happened? I can't see other speakers online. Everybody is there.
Ramprasadji, I have a different view from Pramodji.
Dhruv, please go ahead.
You know, I think what Pramodji is slightly missing, and I think Mr. Dey is also missing. The moment you look at electronic bill of lading, you're going to look at a document which is completely digitized. And it is like having I mean, for all practical purposes, it's already a blockchain. It will be flowing through the system of Mr. Pramod and the whole of Siemens in such a seamless manner that it will cut down, forget courier charges and, you know, people in his office and his CHA and, you know, freight forwarders, but it will seamlessly integrate so beautifully with his entire ERP and with his banking network. Some of the visibility that his finance teams, his overall supply chain, his procurement, himself, the benefits that they will see, I think Pramodji is most likely going to want to pay the shipping lines, and which is going to happen. You're going to see Pramodji spending on APIs with shipping lines. Liji is going to spend on APIs with shipping lines. They're going to be made freely available. You're going to see electronic bills of ladings in these type of blockchain formats. Banks are going to pay for it. You're going to look at the supply chain specifically with shipping lines, and this element of it, in my opinion, it'll end up being paid for. And it'll be paid for like you use APIs or you use a token from place to place, and it'll be very value creative. You will lovingly pay for it because the kind of benefit it will give you will be tremendous. It will integrate very seamlessly with your operating systems. I think it will transform. It will be truly what we call, you know, fourth generation, the fourth industrial revolution will happen in this space. And you will see it happening in the next 3-4 years. It will happen. It's already happened.
Vivek.
Yeah, what I wanted to add was, I think, where is this, you know, anticipation of a free service coming from? I think it is coming from a typical B2C interaction. Like when you go on to Google, you go on to a Facebook, you know, you go on to Amazon, Flipkart, you know, everything is available free of cost to you. Of course, I mean, we got to pay for the goods when you go on to an e-commerce site. But, you know, the basic features, you know, information is available free of cost. You go to Facebook, you can create an account free of cost. The revenue model there is different because they are using the user's data and monopolizing that data by selling it to, you know, the advertisers and making money out of that. But in a B2B kind of a scenario, the revenue models are different, due to data privacy commitments, and which rightfully so. If Pramodji is sharing some Siemens data with me electronically, I don't have, right, ethically as well as regulatory wise, I'm not going to use that data, for anything else. So I'm not going to monetize that data. So whatever investments that have gone into, getting that ease of doing business, there's a huge amount of technology investment, that goes into it. I think that needs to be paid for. So from what I see, the current transactions will continue at maybe at the same rate, if not at a higher rate. So there will not be any waivers. But over a period of time, next 2, 3, 4 years, when we have, large transactions and everybody is on the same platform, at that time, if there are any efficiencies which get achieved and the costs get reduced, then of course, because of competitiveness of the industries, those cost, reduction will get transferred onto the industry. But, just to answer that question of Mr. Day, immediately, I don't foresee that there'll be any immediate reduction in the cost of waivers, because the bill of lading, be it electronic or be it in a paper format, the cost doesn't go away. The documentation department is still there. The manifestation still happens. The data entry still happens. So cost is not going to go away. But when everybody's on the platform, when the shippers start giving the data, the clearing agents start giving the data in an electronic format, when the data entry reduces, when there is a lot of machine learning that happens and the data is able to be collated in a much faster and a quicker way, and that too in hundreds and thousands of transactions, that's where the efficiency will come in, not in the immediate future. Pramodji.
Yeah. So what was my first thing was that in today's situation, people will definitely feel like asking for reduction. And what Dhruv has mentioned and which Vivek has said, that over a period of time when everything is seamless and it will bring its efficiency, the situation will be different. So we have to divide this into two ways. One, what is today's immediate expectations? And when the total seamless system is available, as Dhruv mentioned, connecting, the getting data, and people having all the benefits of bill of lading and other things, and when blockchain, which is definitely 3 to 4 years away. And on this, recently, really a good study has come from really the World Economic Forum. They have published a paper in April on blockchain, and it is 244-page documents. And we need to really see that how they are looking the blockchain implementation on the areas. And they have very clearly mentioned the benefits will come, but it will take 3 to 4 years for everybody. And that time the cost will definitely be down for everybody. Everybody will be win-to-win situation. So it's very interesting to see how this will be implemented, how the things will be into 3 modules, which I just wanted to mention. One is create, connect, and comply. So the whole thing will run across the 3 things, because if you are creating some infrastructure, digital data, connectivity, it will be cost. Then there will be something to connect. There should be ecosystem, and what the Dhruv mentioned as the consortium formation, how it will be governed. So there will be cost, and how it will be complying to the everything and the tax and other thing. So all these things, when it is all in totality, it is going to get a really good benefits, and we will see that in coming years. That is what I will see.
Thank you, Pramod. We have 8 minutes to conclude this webinar. I have one question for all the panelists. I would like to start with Lizzie. Lizzie, what do you expect will happen after some normalcy is restored? Do we see transformation happening, or businesses getting back to the old practices?
I think 2 things will happen. One is, on a lighter note, I really want to go back and see whether my seat in office is completely dusty or can I use it. That's something that everybody would want to do. But I think on a more serious note, there are 2 things that will drive people to keep the benefits that have come from this particular disruption. The first is fear. So when you say normalcy, the question is, what do you mean by normal? Is it that we find a vaccine, everybody gets inoculated, and it's a happy day scenario again? Or do we learn to live with the risk of getting infected every time I step out of home? So this will actually define how the interaction will go. My understanding is, till such time that everybody gets inoculated or we find a vaccine and everything is back the way it was pre-COVID, we will all be living with some amount of fear that every time we step out, there could be infection. Which means that what does it translate to business? Businesses will start taking calls on how many people have to come to office on a particular given day. The challenge of that is that because there will be social distancing norms in place, we have about 100 people working aerobics. For me, I will have to triple the size of the offices that we have currently if we were to accommodate all of them when they are back to work, which is not going to happen. So what I see is that there will be newer norms that come in. Teams will probably start working in rotation. There would be digitization continuing at this pace, but more mature roadmap for each of the organization that is adopting to it. It is not because of force, but because we are able to see benefit and value, and because the new normal has forced us to adopt digitization, that people will start digitizing. Today, when we say work from home, it has been just, I mean, the way it was implemented for most organizations is take your laptop home, we will figure out how you can connect to the network. And once you're connected to the network, we will figure out how you can start working. That will change, definitely. So I don't see normal being as the way it used to be. There will be a new normal, and the new normal will mean that more and more telecommuting, more and more people working from remote locations. For me personally, I have a colleague who's working from Bora, Chhattisgarh. It means that when I look at recruitments now, I will look at it globally, rather than saying that I need someone in Mumbai. So the things that I see should help us.
Thank you, Lizzie. Dhruv, more in terms of business practices, what will you see?
I mean, I think we're already seeing it. I think first of all, I mean, I read a fantastic piece yesterday about the Adani Group, and I think full compliments to the Adani Group. They've made a substantial amount of progress in terms of truly creating remote terminal processes. So they've, I think, completely gone remote on a number of their container terminals where they're able to manage entire these are critical operations, right? These are critical operations when you're dealing with a terminal operating system, and you go remote with a terminal operating system. That's just tremendous. So you're seeing, a lot of companies with mission critical systems starting to look at moving these, into a remote environment. And that's very brave. And I think full marks to them. And they've taken full, I'm not saying advantage, but they've taken full use of, the crisis to achieve some of these things. And we are, in fact, reaching out to them as we speak to learn from them and see how we can, adopt as well. So I think that's one process we are going to see. You're going to see a lot of remote working, and not just, in terms of emails and things, but I'm saying mission critical operations truly are going to move, to remote working, working from cloud. I think you're going to look at a lot of safety protocols. And again, I don't mean, social distancing, but I'm saying safety protocols linked to how you manage your networks, how you manage your platforms, your businesses, your ERPs. I think the sensitivity of what's going to be there is going to be a lot more. The mission criticality for everything now, right, is going to increase a lot. So that's going to be a huge change in everyone's mindset, because you're so much more worried about what is there with you digitally, because everything is now being done digitally, everything is being done remote. So there's a lot of criticality with that. I think another point which I think I see as a work change and a work process change is going back to your first point, Mr. Ramprasad. I do see a lot of standardization. I see that a lot of people. I saw a question, earlier in the chat also, which spoke about what's pull and push. I think pull and push and what's the benefit for stakeholders. I think we are all going to realize when we have this type of a pandemic that it's not about what is the benefit for us by doing something specific. It's not short-term benefits. It's just that we all have to contribute to improve the strength of our overall ecosystem. So your ecosystem is only going to get stronger if you contribute. What are you going to receive as a specific benefit? Maybe nothing. Maybe nothing specific. But that's okay. I think in the end of the day, this will be a big change where I think people will realize immediate benefit. It's not about short-term benefit. But it's about benefiting the community as a whole. And when that happens, when that gets strengthened, I think each and every one of us will benefit. So I think that attitudinal change is underway. I think there's a huge amount of work being done by our Prime Minister, and I think helping that attitude change to happen. And I think it's happened. So you will see more and more of that. Nothing else. I think spoken enough.
Thank you, Dhruv. Vivek.
I would just like to add, apart from, we've been essentially talking about business transactions here and automation or digitalization happening there. But I think in terms of human resource practices also, there's going to be change as we see. And, we are looking at, how do you monitor productivity of people who are operating from home? I think there's a lot of, work that's going on in that area. And we will be looking at certain tools like, email monitoring tool. We are talking about desktop monitoring tools. There are these tools are available in the market, which can effectively be deployed to monitor or ensuring that the employee productivity is maintained. So I think these are all the which are coming up as the work from home practices gets regularized and gets imprinted in our lifestyle. I think we see some of these introduction of these tools also. So that that's the two additional information I wanted to share with the people here.
Thank you, Vivek. I have to end this webinar. We have overshot some time. So thank you very much, all my panelists. So the summary is, in our everyday lives, things will slowly get back to normal. We will be able to travel again. We will go back to offices. We will visit our relatives, but some things will have changed forever. So better prepare and adjust to this brave new world. Thank you very much to all my panelists through Lizzie Noval and Vivek Kele, Pramod Sant and Raghav for the wonderful insights that they have shared on the digitalization and the future. And also to all the participants who have been through this 1 hour webinar. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.